interested in the mechanisms by which information is passed on from parent to infant. And of course, most of that information is genetic. It's encoded in our genes. But over and above that, there's a layer of information which we call epigenetic, which comprises modifications made to the DNA or to how the DNA is organized in the nucleus and wrapped into chromatin proteins. And we're interested to understand how much of that information is hardwired or how much of it can be modified by the experience of the mother or what the mother has been exposed to in terms of nutrition or other factors.
So I study the concept of the developmental origins of health and disease, which we call DOHAD for short. And this is essentially the idea that things that happen during early life and during development can have lifelong impacts on your health. But more than that, things that happened to your parents before you were even born can have impacts on your health once they have you. And further to that, things that happen during your life can impact the health of your children and your grandchildren even.
So my own research is looking at how early brain development is affected by all sorts of environmental influences, and mostly I'm looking at how poverty-related risk factors are affecting early child development, which is of course quite a big topic, given that a substantial number of children around the world are still sadly growing up under extreme poverty at the moment.
Basically, in the lab, we are interested in understanding the impact of maternal obesity in infertility first, because of course there is an obvious link, but also the long-term effects of that literature shows on how maternal obesity predisposes to health and disease in the offspring.
The plain fact is that certainly in the more developed world, we are experiencing an epidemic in obesity. And we want to understand whether that has an impact on the next generation, whether it will help to predispose them to the levels of obesity that their parents might have had.
So things that happen to us in early development have the potential to have some of the biggest impacts on our health throughout our life. If we can understand the things that affect our health in these really early stages of our life, this gives us a chance to go in and try and work out treatments or interventions we can give the mother or a child to have the greatest impact to preserve their health throughout their life.
So we know that, for example, when mothers are affected by certain risk factors, that doesn't only affect them, but also can, for example, have effects on their own parenting and then in turn affect their children as they are growing up. So these things tend to be pervasive for that reason, just because they are not only affecting an individual, but also generations down the line. And of course, by that also sort of the societies that these individuals are growing up in or placed in. Yeah.
It's more affordable to prevent disease than to treat disease. Okay. Particularly if we talk about polygenic disease such as obesity, cancer. So, it's the effort is going towards preventing disease and understanding how disease occurs, and therefore there is a growing interest and a clear awareness of what we do today affects health and diseases of our offspring.
At the moment, we're at a stage, I think, where there are more and more projects that are looking at early brain development in different contexts around the world. So this is, I would say, still a new field, but I think a really important one. And I think the next stages that I see for this field are, firstly, to really understand in much more depth the specific risk factors and how they are interacting with brain development across development, so also in this very longitudinal perspective. But then also trying to understand how these early neural markers that we're measuring, how they are related to sort of more long-term developmental outcomes. So to sort of see whether we can use these early neural measures to understand which children might most benefit from extra support through interventions, for example, growing up.
It's important to work across multiple disciplines in order to really have an impact with this research. We need basic scientists and basic biologists to really understand what's going on in the body so we can understand what to target. We need clinicians and doctors who can work with patients and actually implement this stuff to affect people's lives. And we also need people in other disciplines such as politics and legislation to really get these ideas into legislation so they can be passed on and actually used professionally.